Welcome to Future Talk. The field of robotics is growing rapidly. Scientists continue to develop robots more capable and more intelligent than ever before. What kind of future is this leading us to? According to my guest, there are two main tracks of robotic development, each of which could lead us to a very different future depending on which track prevails. John Markoff is a Pulitzer Prize-winning science reporter for the New York Times and author of the new book, Machines of Loving Grace, The Quest for Common Ground Between Humans and Robots. John, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
John, what are these two tracks of development that you speak about in your book?
Well, broadly, they're referred to as artificial intelligence, which I think people are familiar with. But there's another term, which is called intelligence augmentation. And that's AI, and one on the other side is IA. And to get an idea of what we mean by intelligence augmentation, think of the personal computer. Steve Jobs famously referred to it as a bicycle for the mind. So on the one side, you have a technology that might replace a human. Those AI technologies are becoming more powerful all the time. And on the other hand, you have a technology that extends a human. And I realized when I started to work on this book that they're sort of philosophically opposite approaches. And of course, even when it's not just a dichotomy, but it's also a paradox. Because when you augment a human, they can do more things, and that displaces people too. And so when I started to work on this book, it was really to try to sort of unpack that puzzle and understand how these technologies will transform us in the future.
So is one track preferable to the other, would you say?
I wouldn't say no. What I came away with from my reporting was a real sense that there's no black and white answer. What I came away with was a sense that these machines are still designed by humans, and the human designers have a growing power to basically design us into the future or design us out. And so it's a question of what the human values are. And the book is essentially a set of interwoven narratives about designers of these themes. And I was trying to get at designers of these systems, and I was trying to get at the kind of human values that they have and the decisions that they made.
Now you have a copy of the book with you right here. Why don't you hold it up to that camera so the audience can see what it looks like? Okay, Machines of Loving Grace. Is that title inspired by anything in particular?
Well, I was one of those people who grew up in the 60s, and there was a poet by the name of Richard Brautigan, and he wrote a number of wonderful poems, Trout Fishing in America, Confederate General and Big Sur, and he also wrote a program called All Watched Over by Machines of Loving Grace. And I actually didn't stumble across that poem in the 60s, but I did find it after the personal computer industry got rolling in the 1980s. And I always found it a sort of powerful and very sweet poem. And so when I came to sort of think about this, it really resonated with me. And of course, you might actually put a question mark after it, although I thought that would be a little bit heavy-handed.
So does that mean that machines are going to be our masters, but they'll be benign masters?
So what I came away with is that we have this decision of, we really do have a decision as human designers about whether these will be our masters or our slaves or our partners. And that's a question of design.
And who makes that decision? Is it the scientists who develop what the robots will be, or is it market-driven, where somebody says, I will pay you so much to develop the kind of robot that I want?
Yeah. So in looking at the different communities, I found that there really are different value systems. The two communities, the AI community and the IA community. The IA community is now sort of referred to in the industry as human-computer interaction design. Those are the people who design the interfaces for the machines that we use. And I found that as a group, they tend to be very sensitive about the role of the human and what the value of this technology will have to us. On the AI side, sometimes they really love the toys. I mean, these are very powerful machines. I can't tell you how many times I ran into designers who actually went into AI, the field of AI, because they saw a science fiction movie. For example, Space Odyssey 2001. There are people who decided they wanted to build HAL. And that wouldn't be my idea taken away from the movie, but a lot of people came away from that. Really well-known artificial intelligence researchers.
Now, we actually have several videos today showing some of the recent developments in robotics. What's this first video going to show us?
Well, this is a video that was produced by the people who are now Google engineers, but they were at a company called Boston Dynamics. And they built technology that was used by the Pentagon as a research machines, but then they also built the technology for a DARPA contest called the DARPA Robotics Challenge. And that was basically a ambitious contest that involved some of the world's best roboticists to design robots to work in rescue situations like Fukushima, where the environment was too dangerous for humans. And the idea was to use robots to operate where humans can't.
Okay, so let's go ahead and roll that first video. So there's no voice track on this, so we can discuss what's going on.
So what's remarkable about this, I mean, this is highly scripted, and you only see part of the entire situation. Those cables are providing power, and they also provide balance, which is very essential. But the thing that really doesn't become obvious here immediately is this robot is being teleoperated. It is not autonomous, and all of those movements are actually being sort of orchestrated by a human that's not on the set.
You mean it's sort of a puppet where every move is operated by a human?
That was the situation, and very impressive, but not something that's going to come up to your door and knock it down by itself.
Right. And especially since it has to be attached to things that can't move around freely.
That's right. That was, you know, the Boston Dynamics people are actually among the world's best designers of machines that balance and walk. But it's really a sort of a statement about where we are here today. And they like to put out these videos to sort of get attention. And that video was viewed billions of times on YouTube, so it was very effective.
Now in this next video, we see robots that can move about by themselves. What are we going to see in this one?
So this is an important video. This is a video that Boston Dynamics produced after the company was acquired by Google. And of course, Google has an entire robot division now. They acquired more than 13 companies from all over the world, and they haven't been very public about what they want to do. But I do know that the person who put that division together, a roboticist by the name of Andy Rubin, when he was going around the country, he was telling people what he wanted to build was he wanted to build a system that would deliver packages in competition to Amazon. So basically the Google car, the self-driving car, would drive up in front of your house, and the Google robot, dog in this case, four-legged dog, would jump off the back and run the package up to your steps. And in that video, you can actually see a robot climbing the steps of what could be your
Okay, let's take a look at this next video. So there are 4 dog-like robots.
So once again, the locomotion and balance here is really quite remarkable, and that is autonomous, but that's relatively low-level behavior. And what you don't see is the man walking behind the robot with the backpack and the antenna, who's actually sort of controlling at a high level. But now that is as impressive as it gets. I mean, there's just an amazing
balance.
Yeah, the balance is just really quite startling.
Quite realistic.
And it's also anthropomorphic. You get the sense, well, not anthropomorphic, but it gives you a sense of an animal kind of behavior.
Now, does the operator just tell him what direction to go in, or does it say to him, there's a curb coming up, so step higher?
I think it's more than just direction. The operator has a lot of controls, and control speed, control direction, can make the robot sit down, stand up. I don't know if they can make them roll over, but I know they can make them
beg.
Yeah, but here it is coming up to your house, and you know, basically autonomously walking up the stairs, which is extremely impressive. So you could conceive of a Google robot trotting up to your house and dropping off a package.
It needs teeth, though, to hold the package. Why not give it an extra pair of hands? Why be limited?
The sensor there at the front of the robot is called a LiDAR. That's basically a laser radar, and it gives the robot an incredibly detailed view of the world in front of it. You can see pebbles that are hundreds of feet away.
Does it give it a 360-degree view because it's rotating?
Yeah, it does actually.
Is that like the camera on the Google cars that spin around?
Very much, very similar. So you see things out in hundreds of feet in every direction, and very small little pebbles. There's a larger one. Now the Pentagon's interested in these as well, not as weapons necessarily, but as robots in really rugged terrain that could carry humans, could carry gear and equipment.
So it's interesting, you want to get mobile robots, but how do you model motion? So they're choosing to model it on a dog because we know that dog anatomy works. So if we can model that, that's better than inventing something. Or we can model human anatomy because that works. It usually works, but in this next video, I think we see some humanoid robots that might not work that well. What are we going to see in this final video?
DARPA, which is the Pentagon's think tank, it stands for Defense Advanced Research Project Agency, wanted to help build a set of robot technologies that could essentially allow robots to go into Fukushima-like situations and do things where humans couldn't operate in that environment. And that's actually, I think, a very necessary technology. If we had had robots at the time of Fukushima that could have gone in and shut the valves down when the humans had to leave, we could have avoided some of the disaster of Fukushima. So they set out to do that, and they had 2 contests. They happened over the space of 2.5 years, and there was a large $1 million prize for the winner, and 24 teams competed. And some of the best roboticists in the world at both corporations and at universities. And what we see is what I call ground truth. This is where we really are in terms of the capability of these technologies. So if we could look at it.
Okay, let's take a look at this last video. That was pretty good. I don't know if I would want to be one of the designers of the robot that appeared in that. That's like the blooper reel.
That was clearly the blooper reel. And actually, to be fair to the DARPA contest, 3 of the robots were actually able to successfully perform the 8 tasks, which included driving a vehicle, walking over uneven ground, opening a door, turning a valve, throwing a switch, climbing a ladder. But they took about 50 minutes, 45 or 50 minutes to do something you and I could do in about 5 minutes. And most of the robots couldn't do all the tasks.
They seemed pretty lead-footed. I mean, not a little ungainly to say the least, but.
Well, I think it's a very important sort of, I use the word ground truth. This is where autonomy and autonomous machines are in unstructured environments today. And so if we worry about, everybody goes to the movies and they see Chappie and they see Ex Machina and they see all these movies that give us this sense that these machines are going to be superhuman. And they're not superhuman yet. In fact, the son of the DARPA manager, a man by the name of Gil Pratt, who saw this, said to his dad, if you're afraid of the Terminator, just keep your door closed because they're having trouble opening the door.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, certain tasks that seem simple to human, like turning a doorknob. Like that one, it was trying to turn the valve, but its hand wasn't on the valve. It missed the valve, but it was turning it as if it thought it had the valve.
Yeah, with millions of dollars, these teams, millions of dollars for each team and years of preparation, most of the sort of things you saw in that contest were low-level autonomy, but most of the actual control was done by humans, teleoperating them from a distance.
Now, how old is this video? How old are these robots? Is this like within the past year?
3-4 months. This has just happened.
All right, so this is pretty recent stuff.
Just happened. Yeah, this is a more difficult problem even than the problem of a self-driving car. Elon Musk basically, I think, started a gigantic experiment with his user base. He rolled out what he's calling a self-driving driving feature for for the Tesla Model S. And I think it's going to be fascinating. I think if there's one bad accident with one of the Teslas, because even though you're supposed to keep your hands on the wheel, there's a sign on the display that tells you keep your hands on the wheel, you can see from the Google videos that lots and lots of people are taking their hands off the wheels, and sometimes the machines are doing things that are not expected. And there are big, powerful automobiles that are going 60 miles an hour, and with, fraction of a second reaction times, there's lots of room for bad things to happen.
Well, do you think a machine can really be intelligent and exercise judgment, or can it only do what it's been programmed to do? So if it ever encounters a situation that it hasn't been pre-programmed for, there's no way of predicting what it's going to do.
So, Google has been, involved in its own self-driving car project for a long, long time, and they have, this question of, can you operate in an environment where unexpected things happen? And robots are beginning to do that. They're taking baby steps, but they're not humans, and they're not thinking machines right now. They're not self-aware. You can, I think, basically program machines to be much more adaptive than the environment than they are, and we're going to see behavior like that. But human level adaptation on fraction of a second kind of situations, I think that we'll see autonomous machines in the air, we'll see them underseas, we'll see them in cyberspace, but walking around in rooms like this, that's going to be sort of the last challenge.
Now, what about autonomous robots that require little or no human supervision? What's the impact of that? Is that going to put a whole bunch of people out of work? For example, automobile assembly workers.
The workforce is always changing rapidly. I started on the question of technological obsolescence as someone with my hair on fire. There's a new wave of technologies that are displacing. We've displaced manual labor for centuries. We can go back to the Luddites and talk about displacing manual labor. But what's happening now for the first time is we're beginning to displace high-level, skilled white-collar work with machines. For example, one of the pieces I wrote in, I think, 2010 was about $35 an hour paralegals and $400 an hour attorneys who were being displaced by software that did a demonstrably better job of reading documents than humans.
I don't think too many customers would be disturbed by that.
First thing we do is kill all the lawyers. Well, that's a separate question. But the legal profession is being transformed by this kind of technology. Radiologists, we're going to soon be at a point where machines will do a better job of reading radiographs, x-rays, other kinds of
diagnose your illnesses better than a physician?
Yes, you're going to see machines do that. So are we going to be in a situation where there are no jobs? There are many people around Silicon Valley and who believe that by 2045 that this technology is changing so rapidly that there will be no human jobs at all left over the next 3 decades. And I think that's preposterous. I think that it's a much more nuanced situation than we might think. For example, I was having this debate with an economist by the name of Danny Kahneman, who's a behavioral economist, well known, and I was saying, well, the robots are going to come to China, and manual labor is going to be displaced, and there's going to be social disruption. And he responded to me. He said, "You don't get it." He said, "In China, the robots are going to come just in time." I said, "Excuse me?" And he pointed out to me that China is aging more quickly than the United States. And as a result, because of the one-child policy in China largely, their workforce is going to start to contract on one side. Okay, so the workforce is not going to grow. And on the other side, the population is going to age. And so you might actually need robots to take care of aging humans. And so as I began to look around, I realized that the entire industrial world is aging very radically. And when you think about that, it changes everything. We really might be in a situation where the robots might come just in time.
I think in some countries like Japan, they use robots for personal companionship.
They do. That's a very interesting question and highly debated and controversial here in this country. If one of the problems of aging is isolation, what is it like to have perhaps a machine that can be a very brilliant conversationalist? Is that a bad thing? There are some people who are extremely worried about the lack of human contact. But if the aging people are being ignored and not having human contact anyway, is it bad that you'll have a machine to converse with? It's a very sort of deep philosophical question I don't think we've answered yet. I think the movie Her, which was about a relationship between sort of a lonely man and a software program, is
which outgrew him.
Well, that was the interesting thing, because the other debate in Silicon Valley, I mean, Elon Musk talked about this technology as summoning the devil, summoning the demon, is what Elon said. So is this technology going to evolve and somehow decide that we're the enemy, or that we're lunch, and that'll be the end of us? And I actually thought that the end of Her was the more plausible situation, if in fact there could be a superhuman intelligence, which is yet to be determined. But what happened in Her is the machines became brilliant, and we kind of bored them, and they went off to do more interesting things. And I think that's the likely outcome.
But as far as machines being destructive, there's a lot of military uses for them, because machines might not be hostile to humans, but some groups of humans are hostile to others, and they will use machines, autonomous machines, against. And what's the potential for that?
Yeah.
Like military robots that select their own targets and fire when they decide to, without the need of a human operator.
I actually think that while I don't agree with Elon Musk that the technology is accelerating as fast as he does, and that there will be self-aware machines, I think there will be autonomous machines, and the likelihood of there being autonomous weapons soon. There already are autonomous weapons being used in the world today, and I think that that's something that the societies of the world need to actively think about in a very serious fashion, because when we basically delegate decisions of any kind, whether they be a diagnosis, a medical doctor, or a killing decision by a machine, you run into this kind of really sort of serious ethical question of disconnecting decision making from humans. And we're right on the cusp of that.
There's a theory that says that as machines get smarter, people get dumber. Any truth to that?
I think that those things are a little bit orthogonal. I think that in some cases
like people used to know their multiplication tables.
Well, okay. We also used to know how to make buggy whips. How many of us can make buggy whips today? Do we need that many buggy whips? So the question of getting smarter and getting dumber as a result of machines, I think it cuts both ways. One of the things that I see as one of the best IA tools in the world, intelligence augmentation, is Google. Here's a tool that freely gave most of the wisdom of the world to almost everybody. And so, the potential is there to make us all a lot smarter too. And I guess it depends on the sort of the way the culture works and the society works. So I don't think it's mechanistic.
Do machines change our image of ourselves? For example, if a machine can do a lot of things better than humans, does that mean that humans are less valuable than before?
Well, there are these examples, like Big Blue playing chess, or Watson beating human Jeopardy players, and they're both nuanced. I mean, I thought, for example, the Big Blue contest was an interesting one, because while the chess playing program could read the humans' sort of previous games, the human wasn't allowed to read the chess playing program's games. And so I never thought it was really quite fair. In the Watson case, which was tremendously impressive, no doubt, it turns out at that level in Jeopardy, almost everybody knows all the answers. It's really quite remarkable. What often is the winning sort of skill is the ability to push the button at the right time.
So you can't beat the machine at that.
Well, yeah, exactly. It was statistical, and it has this little window to push in, and believe me, Watson knew exactly when to push the button, and it made it very hard for the humans to compete, but that's not intellectual.
Do you think that we're going to attribute too much respect to computers' intelligence? Because with something like Watson, we feed it a lot of input, but we don't really quite understand what's going on with the processing. So, like, if we start feeding it information about international politics and it comes up with foreign policy decisions, for example, do we think we want to delegate things like that, or economic policy decisions, like the Oracle? You don't know how it works, but it churns out answers, and you say, well, this must be great because we made it with our own hands.
So two answers. One is, I think that's an important question, particularly because the dominant AI technology right now is called deep learning. It's basically a biologically inspired approach to pattern recognition. And we really don't know how those things are working inside. So it's fair to ask if we can pick them apart. The other answer I might give is, in terms of political decision making, I think the bar is pretty low, and the machines might not have
wouldn't take too much to get
right
improvement.
to be better than us.
Well, you never know. But I mean, you think that the time is going to come when we all have personal robots doing our routine chores, like cleaning your house, maybe painting your house.
So you saw the video of the robot falls. Those are
Yeah.
400-pound machines. So the question I've been thinking a lot about is, will robots come in time to do elder care for aging people? And I've seen the experiments in Japan. The Europeans are now spending €1 billion to try to develop an elder care robot. And I think Danny Kahneman's point about if we're lucky, the robots will come just in time. I think it's really problematic. And some of those things, I mean, for me, the benchmark is, when will there be a robot that can give a human a shower? And I think that's a very difficult problem, and it might not be in a decade, it might not be in 2 decades. So there's a lot of work to do.
But I mean, 2 decades is not very long for a geological perspective.
It's true. Maybe for you and me, though.
Yeah. I mean, is there any chance that our whole industrial infrastructure will basically collapse? I mean, what if the power grid goes down? We have this very built-up infrastructure that if countries are hostile to each other, they could do a lot of damage to that. Are we putting so much trust in machines that we can't live without them? And then if they suddenly are not there, we've got serious problems.
There have been tremendous discussions about that. And I think it's still an open question about how resilient the infrastructure is. I mean, the internet is, as it is designed, is actually a remarkably resilient system. It's difficult to take down an entire internet. So yes, I think you're right. We could lose part of the infrastructure. On the other hand, you know, what's the alternative? We could be living with, you know, buggy whips and
well, they say
horses.
Technology can't be stopped. It has to proceed.
Well, it has to be stopped, but I think we can. It can't be stopped, perhaps, but I think we can direct it in perhaps better directions than worse.
And on that note, we're going to have to stop because we are out of time. I'd like to thank you for being here today. I've been speaking with John Markoff, Pulitzer Prize winning science reporter for the New York Times and author of the new book, Machines of Loving Grace. John, thanks for coming.
Thank you for having me.
I'm Marty Wasserman. Visit our website, www.futuretalk.net. See you next time.